A lot of you watch my M1 versus M4 iPad Pro video, so I wanted to revisit with the new M5 to see if it's finally worth upgrading to. This video is brought to you by Moft. I've still been using my M1 iPad Pro for the past few months, and I haven't really noticed any slowdowns. The main things that have started to show their age are standby battery. I've seen my M1 drop around 15 to 20% overnight, and the LCD screen can feel a little outdated compared to the newer models. But speaking of which, let's talk about displays. Displays are definitely the most noticeable difference between the two, and keep in mind that both of these are 11-inch models. The M1 iPad Pro is still using Apple's Liquid Retina LCD, and honestly, it still looks really good until you put it next to the M5. With the OLED display, the blacks on the M5 are actual blacks. So when you're watching videos with black bars, the M5 just melts into the bezel, while the M1 looks more gray and washed out. And the M5's display is actually a tiny bit taller with slightly higher resolution than the M1. It's super subtle, like 1.3% difference to be exact, but technically you do get a little bit more screen real estate. I actually want to talk about brightness because that's where the differences get a little bit more interesting. For everyday non-HDR content, the M5 can hit 1000 nits, but I'll be honest, you don't really notice it unless you're outside or comparing them side by side. But with HDR content, it's a completely different story. The M5 can hit 1600 nits of peak brightness in HDR, and this is where the OLED absolutely destroys the M1. HDR videos just jump off the screen, and on the M1, everything suddenly looks dim and very flat. And by the way, HDR is really hard to capture accurately on camera, so it might not look as dramatic here, but in person, the difference is huge. One thing I noticed is that the M1 actually looks a little bit cooler in general than the M5. Mostly because the colors on the M1 are less saturated and the blacks aren't as deep. So overall, the M5's display is clearly better, the HDR, better contrast, it just has a lot more life to it. And aside from the displays, the next biggest difference you'll notice is the design. Design-wise, the differences are there, but they're pretty subtle in day-to-day use. On paper, the M5 is thinner and lighter, but it's not a huge difference unless you're holding them side by side. I've never picked up the M1 iPad Pro and thought, wow, this is heavy. M5 is only about 20 grams lighter, so I feel like it's more of a subtle improvement that you only appreciate if you hold your iPad for long periods of time. For my use, which is mostly for watching videos and light productivity, the thinness is more of a nice aesthetic upgrade than something that changes how I use the iPad. And if you've noticed these folios I've been using throughout the video, these are from Moft, and they've honestly made using the iPad a lot more fun. Moft just released the 2 new colors of their dynamic folio, beach white with terracotta, and navy blue with Aussie green. They both look really clean, but I'm kind of leaning towards this beach white just because how good this terracotta looks inside. What I love about these folios is how you get over 20 folding angles that actually make sense in real life. I use the 60-degree floating theater mode for watching videos, the 30-degree creation mode for handwriting notes, and the 18-degree dual screen mode for when I'm typing on the iPad and have my phone propped up for multitasking. They also sent over the connected case. It's an ultra slim shell that works with a dynamic folio, and even the Magic Keyboard. It's just 0.06 inches thin and incredibly lightweight. It adds Apple Pencil protection and has smart connector pass-through, so everything still connects normally. If you're interested, you can check out my link down below or use my code JAMES for 10% discount. Anyway, one change I really do like is the placement of the front camera. On the M1, the camera is on the top bezel in portrait mode, which means when you're on FaceTime in landscape, it always looks like you're looking off to the side. The M5 moves the camera to the landscape edge and it just looks way more natural, especially if you're using a keyboard. The back camera also changed. The M1 has a wide and an ultra-wide lens, but the M5 drops the ultra-wide and just keeps a single-wide camera. Honestly, the ultra-wide camera on the M1 is pretty unusable anyway. The image quality is soft, noisy, and overly processed, so I don't really miss it on the M5. So both iPads basically have the same 12 megapixel wide camera, but the M5 has noticeably better image processing. The photos look a little more natural, less grainy, and the colors don't have that overly sharpened and processed look that the M1 sometimes has. And even in video, the M5 just handles exposure and noise better when you compare them side by side. One practical upgrade though is the new True Tone flash. When I scanned documents, I didn't really see a big difference on plain black and white pages, but with color documents, the M5 kept the colors look less washed out. So if you scan a lot of things on your iPad, especially colored images, the M5 is going to do a better job. But cameras aside, I know a lot of people care about performance, so let's talk about that. Performance has always been a weird topic for me, just because I never really do anything intense on my iPad. I'm not editing 4K timelines or building 3D models, and honestly, my M1 has always felt fast enough for what I do. Don't get me wrong, the M5 is definitely way more powerful, especially for graphics heavy and AI related tasks. The biggest improvement is the neural engine, which basically just helps the iPad handle AI smart features more efficiently. I personally don't use much AI features other than ChatGPT here and there, so it's not something I rely on every day. But as Apple and third-party apps inevitably shift towards more AI, the M5 chip will be able to handle them better in the long run. In real use, I tested background removal in the Photos app, and the M5 was significantly faster at recognizing background objects and deleting them. For multitasking and handling multiple windows, the difference is pretty small. New windowing and multitasking feels a tiny bit snappier on the M5, but I don't think most people will notice in their day-to-day. And if you're someone who actually edits videos or does heavy creative work on the iPad, the M5 will definitely handle those workloads better than the M1. Another difference is in connectivity. The M5 has a new N1 chip with Wi-Fi 7 support, which is a big upgrade if you have a Wi-Fi 7 router. It also has Bluetooth 6, which is more stable with newer accessories compared to Bluetooth 5 on the M1. The last thing I want to touch on is the accessories. Starting with the new Magic Keyboard for the M4 or M5, it definitely feels more premium. It has an aluminum palm rest, a much nicer haptic trackpad, and finally a full function row for brightness, volume, and shortcuts. It feels way more like using an actual MacBook compared to the older Magic Keyboard that came with the M1. But you do have to buy a new one since it's not cross-compatible. Your old M1 Magic Keyboard won't work on the M5, and vice versa. For the Apple Pencil, the M5 only supports the new Apple Pencil Pro. It has squeeze gestures, barrel roll rotation for brushes, and haptic feedback. It's awesome for artists, but for me personally, I mostly use the pencil for simple notes or highlighting, so both are totally fine for that. Just like the Magic Keyboard, the new Apple Pencil Pro will not work with your M1 iPad, and vice versa. So if you upgrade to the new M5 iPad, you'll also have to upgrade your Apple Pencil. With all that said, here's who I think should actually upgrade. If you want the newest and fastest iPad Pro, the M5 is the obvious choice here. It has the better display, faster wireless connection, and it's the model that'll age the best. But if you use your iPad like I do, watching content, light productivity, note-taking, the M1 is still amazing. It doesn't feel slow, and you're not really missing much day to day. The upgrade is mostly for headroom and future-proofing, especially if you're getting into more creative or AI-heavy workflows. And even compared to the M4, the M5 isn't a huge jump either, so for most people, it's not a must upgrade. I'll continue using my M1 iPad Pro till next year, but who knows? Maybe M6 will be the one to finally make me want to upgrade, but honestly, it's gonna take some big changes for me to switch. Let me know in the comments below which iPad you're using, and that's all I have for today. Thanks again to Moth for sponsoring this video, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye now.